Thanks, Jacob. Hi, everyone. As Jacob mentioned, I'm Paul Whitcover, the Associate Dean of the Online MFA. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's Word for Word event. This is our final event for the 24-25 season, and we're super excited to end again with the Graduate Student Spotlight. Our 5 graduate readers were selected by capstone and thesis instructors for their exceptional storytelling skills and high literary achievement, and we're thrilled to hear them read from their work tonight. So please welcome Bethany Willard from the BA program, Nikki White and Jessica Matson from the MA program, and Ashleigh Worley and Kayleigh Michael from the online MFA program. Please note that these readings may include sensitive subject matter that may not be suitable for all audiences. If at any time you feel overwhelmed, feel free to step away and return when you are willing or able to. Finally, as this is a creative writing celebration, let's keep chat comments specific to craft and storytelling. A Q&A with our readers will follow the readers. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jacob to introduce our first reader of the evening.
Thank you so much, Paul. I am honored to introduce our first graduate reader for the night, Bethany Willard. Bethany Willard earned a BA in creative writing and English from Southern New Hampshire University. They grew up in a small town ripe for planting stories within the quiet of the Puget Sound. Once pursuing a career in psychology, Bethany has delved into the human condition and emotions, fascinated with the ways our pasts pave the direction of our futures. Pages upon pages of drafts lead a trail to where Bethany now sits, typing away with this in mind, waiting for the moment to break into the publishing world. Their poetry and novel samples can currently be viewed on their WordPress blog at Blush Whimsy. And when they are not soaking pages with symbolism, Bethany enjoys playing Dungeons and Dragons, hiking, and annoying their husband and cat. Bethany works for the nonprofit Prevail in Washington and volunteers for an Oregon-based LGBTQ plus nonprofit that can be found on Instagram at Identity Euphoria. Welcome, Bethany.
Hi, thank you.
And
okay.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Bethany, before you start, I just want to remind everyone to turn your cameras and mics off when Bethany is doing her reading. Okay, back over to you.
So I am just going to read part of the beginning of a queer rom-com novel that I am working on. Music drifts down the street. The notes dance through the trees, bounce off the raindrops, and encompass Alec. He doesn't even notice his legs slow down as the music wraps around him. Something about it is somber. It trails down his spine with notes of longing, of reaching for something, or perhaps someone. Higher notes dance around the heaviness, conveying a resilience to carry on, to believe despite it all. A dramatic, heartbreaking note reverberates through the air, shattering the momentary warmth. But then, just before it fades away, it is cut off by a short, high note that speaks of hope. The air is silent as static, despite the rain, despite the heavy rise and fall of Alec's chest. Another song begins with a trembling note. Run forgotten, Alec pivots and walks toward the sound. His steps fall in line with the beat of the song, the music flowing in his veins, guiding him to a break between the trees. Nestled there is a small park, typically used for the farmers' markets. Near the far edge of the park is a small cement stage surrounded by people in various degrees of awe and pauper dress. Few umbrellas dot the park, and many people even wear flip-flops. The rainy season is roughly 330 days long in Dubrick, Washington anyway. Most locals, including Alec, don't care to fuss over it. The covering over the stage seems to wane in the wind as if it might give out and collapse on the sole occupant, but the musician doesn't seem to notice. His eyes are closed as he plays, fingers trailing along the violin strings, using his bow to draw out the sound. He dances around the stage, swaying with the music, making sweeping movements with each note. Black curls float behind him as he moves back and forth as the music takes him. Alec creeps closer before stopping again, slipping his own eyes shut to absorb the music. This song is more upbeat than the previous one. Notes skip up and down the staff. The tone is beautiful, pure, and whole. In his mind, Alex sees a painting come to life, a bright yellow figure with a skirt twirling around and around, pushing and pulling against a figure in lavender. Their feet work fast, dancing around each other, light and radiant. Animals stroll among the grass around them, and below, birds skim across the water. Everything is vibrant. The yellow and lavender meet once more. A note is held, diminishing as the yellow figure is dipped low, and then everything is silent. Alex's eyes snap open just as the booming applause begins. On the stage, the man bows low. When he straightens, Alec is struck by gunmetal blue eyes, an ocean amidst a storm. They lock onto Alex's eyes and hold for a moment, the man's face softening a touch before he turns away. Sorry if you can hear my cat in the background. Alec, he just barely hears past the ringing in his ears. The crowd is beginning to thin out, and Alec tries to look around. Alec, over here. Alec's eyes scan the area before landing on Sybil. They stand near the stage, blonde hair plastered to their face, wearing simple jeans and green sweater cardigan that matches their eyes. A shiver seems to pass through them, but they ignore it. No umbrella in sight, sandals on feet, a complete disregard for the weather. Alec wonders if Sybil finds something poetic in their defiance. Just as Alec is making his way over, the musician walks over Sybil, flicking them in the forehead. Swatting his hand away, Sybil squawks. What the hell was that for, Sage? You know why. The voice is steady as stone, but smooth as velvet. Alex stops in front of them, smiling. Stop pissing people off, Sybil. I didn't even do anything. You're just dislikable, the musician says. That's rich, coming from you. Laughing, Alec turns to the now smirking man on the stage. Hey, I'm Alec. You played beautifully. The man quirks a brow, tilting his head to the side. Sage, he says, and then adds, that's high praise coming from you. Alec's pulse jumps. You know who I am? Sage scoffs. You're Alec Sterling. Of course I do. And I think I'm going to stop there because I think that's about 5 minutes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Bethany. Great visuals. Like I said, I love the dancing. And then, of course, like I feel like you captured the musical notes, climbing up and down the staff beautifully as well. Before we move on to our next writer, quick question. I see, like from your bio, that you work for nonprofit Proveo, and then you also work in a LGBTQ plus nonprofit. So, like a lot of our students, you have another job beyond writing. How do other jobs influence your writing? I mean, was there something that from those jobs that influenced this particular story, or anything like that, or do you like to keep them separate in a specific way, or?
So my job with Provale, I actually just started in February. So the story came long before that, but I think it is going to help a lot. So that job, we help support adults with disabilities, and I think that's going to help bring a lot of perspective into the story, on how I can bring just more representation, hopefully, and more different types of people into stories. Because as someone who also is in the queer community, representation is something that's very important to me, and I want to try to make sure that if I'm doing so, I'm doing so in a positive way, because we all have seen far too many examples of poor representation in media. So I'm hoping getting more perspectives will enrich the writing as well.
Awesome. Wow. That's lovely. And I'm very happy to hear that. And how great that you are able to use your day job to help you with your writing as well. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Stay tuned. We'll have a Q&A after the other readers and everything. But yeah, thanks for kicking us off tonight. Paul, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to introduce our next reader.
Okay. Happy to do so. I'm excited to welcome our next reader, Kayleigh Michael. Sorry, I just want to, there she is. Hi, Kayleigh. Kayleigh co-facilitates Northampton Literary Society in Western Massachusetts, which provides free writing meetups, workshops, and open mics in the area, which sounds pretty cool. She teaches composition and leads tutors at Southern New Hampshire University, where she also earned her MFA in October 2024. She is currently querying her first novel, Salt Moon, and writing Sunday missives on Substack. So Kayleigh, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And now Kayleigh with the weather. I'd have to do a quick shameless plug that, yes, I do work here and I work for academic support. So anybody here who is a student and wants, that extra set of eyes on their writing academic support is a great place to do that with the peer tutors. So please check them out. So this is a blurb from Salt Moon, my novel that I wrote in the MFA. And just for context, it's mid-beginning. For anybody who likes to read along, I just made a little Google Doc of this scene to offer you. And so in this scene, the main character, Pat, is going into his mother's garage stained glass studio the day after his father has passed away. So he's working on cleaning out the house, and that's where we are when this scene happens. So here we go. Pat huffs a sigh and collects himself at the push bar door, looks at his shoes to avoid the Elmo sticker, faded pink and eyeless with time. He'd had to lift his brother up to stick it high enough so Maura could see it. They always wanted to make her laugh to think of them, even in her special room, the only one she liked to be alone in. He hasn't stood here in years, though he's the most frequently appearing child and can't remember if he should knock or just push his way in. His freckled knuckles rap 3 times. Come in. The push bar squeaks and the hinges do too. His gaze takes a moment to cast up from the floor, and the first thing that strikes him is all the color. The window right ahead of him is bright in the light of the sinking sun, and he squints into 3 turning glass feathers which hang from the ceiling. They reflect onto a patch of cement floor, parallelograms of yellow, orange, gold. There's a shop vac by the connecting garage door, and she obviously uses it daily. The brown shag rug that leads to his mother's slippered feet is immaculate, a freshly groomed animal. He can remember now their dog, Santa, used to have a bed under the workbench. Can almost see him now, curled like a pastry at the queen's feet while she broke glass in her hands like chocolate. Now she's holding up a deep green square to the window in front of her, and it casts back onto her face, turning and changes as she flips it in her hands. Turning and changing as she flips it in her hand. He doesn't know where to start now that he's with her, but wants to prove he deserves to be here. He wants to convince her to come with him when all this is over. Yes, my son, she says in a deep and underused voice, and clears her throat as she sets the glass back down on the bench. I have some questions. Is everyone informed? Maura is being formal to keep things light. Pat knows he's the same way and that they're speaking in kind of a code. But he's the one with questions. Yes, miss, Sonny and Max are here, and we're heading to Buchanan's if you want anything or want to come. Good, and very much no. She holds the green glass firmly onto her drawing, scores lines in the shape of a leaf. I'd rather not be consoled yet, again, Jesus, at all, if I could avoid it altogether. Pat leans over her shoulder from high above and casts his eyes over the thick-lined drawing. It could be its own piece, hung somewhere in public. The details and proportions are surprising but perfect, and the paper spills off the bench the size of a coffin. He feels his eyes well up with pride, blurring the black ink eyes of a doe who stares back at him. That's amazing, Mom, he says. But she just drops the scoring knife loudly, spins around, and starts fishing for her cigarettes in her apron. Under the window with the most lake in it, she sits on a rust orange clamshell chair and crosses her legs. She's shrunk so much in a few months, the cost of taking care. She stares at the floor and lights her parliament robotically. Pat blinks his tears away and searches for a seat he can take, pulls a short rolling stool from beneath the workbench. And Sean, she asks, still staring vacantly at the floor and exhaling a plume of smoke into the sunlight. He's probably just coming to, Mother, Pat says. annoyed that he even has to call his old friend. He was AJ's friend anyway, and what Sonny calls a hanger-oner. He liked the term, a neutral descriptor somewhere between loyal darling and parasite. Pat realizes he's holding his breath and sighs out. It's a tough time for all of them and Shauna's family, but he feels puffed up and protective at the mere thought of him. Sean likes to stir the pot, and Pat just wants to guide everyone to the other side of this. I'll try him after lunch. Anyway, I was just going through some of Dad's stuff and noticed one of his desk drawers is locked. Is there a key for that anywhere? She turns in the chair and faces the lake beyond her glass rendering of Long Gone Santa, white-faced and pink-tongued on a red Argyle backdrop. I figured you'd get right to work, boyo. Her heart feels squeezed dry outside the ice drifts that glide in the shadows of Mount Calm gleam in the waning light, and a frigid breeze makes a rush at the window. She drops her pretense. I don't want you fucking with anything else until we're all through the, I don't know, the pomp, okay? Sonny agrees, Pat says, unruffled. Always did appreciate that girl. But when I can get back to work in there, a key. She spins around and there's a gnarled hook of ash between her fingers. That's your father's, Patrick. His name sounds worse than a cuss when she spits it out that way. But she collects herself immediately, softens her voice to just above a whisper, so he has to lean in. I know the size, smell, location, and age of everything and everyone in my house, but that desk is his. She shakes her head, ashes drift to the carpet. Was his. And I never touched anything in it, on it, near it, never. Pat leans away and stands with the help of only his long legs. Maura's eyes focus back into her room, and the edges suddenly sharpen. Dust floats in the light. Her son's head is almost grazing the ceiling, and his green eyes are tired. She sees herself, her past and present, the bedroom and the house behind them, once filled with breathing and holding, the passion with which Alex gripped her in the open window dark, how he wanted her when they were young and alone, and how his kisses felt like drowning. Her gut twists terribly. She and her husband made this person in front of her, but Pat looks like she could have created him from sheer will. He is her, ginger and hard-working, big-toothed and loving. Suddenly she really wants him to smile. I'm sorry. She stands and smashes a cigarette into the glass ashtray on the bench. Get me a chicken sandwich from Buchanan's while you're out. I'm tired and a cunt. He laughs with mirth and kisses her head, hugs her hard into his sternum, and she hangs there like a doll until he lets go. Leaning back and looking up, she catches a flash of the half smile, eyes crinkling, the only Alex thing about him. A joy she needed like nicotine, a warmth still living in her son. Years dead in her husband, arriving in body only at the back door of Donnelly's funeral home about now. Pat is still smirking when he joins Sonny and Max in the driveway. The air is getting bitter as they stack into the Tacoma and rumble away. Maura dons her goggles and grinds the edges of a glass leaf smooth. Cold sun splits through the spruce branch and leaks into the house behind her through the living room window, onto the dusty TV where in a spent candle jar, a key dully shines. And that's that.
Well, that
Noticed a couple typos in there while I was reading. But here we are.
You always do, right? Where do they come from suddenly?
Yep.
But that was just beautiful. Thank you so much. I hardly know where to begin in my praise of what I just heard, but I'm going to single out the dialogue to start with, because I feel that your dialogue was so natural sounding, and yet was clearly also the product of a lot of thought. It was almost poetic in the way that it was placed and paced in the narrative. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to dialogue?
Sure. So Jacob will like this. I used to live in Maine before I moved down to Western Mass, and this whole story takes place in like rural Western Maine, like lakeside Maine. And I just wanted it to sound very New England and Irish American, so like people using cunt freely without fear of reprieve. And a lot of this family, especially the mother, Maura, is based on one of my high school best friend's mom, who was very overly formal like that and was almost like a little actress. So wanting to have some semblance of reality to how I grew up in northern New England, I think that was a big part of when I was in the marketing classes in the MFA, like to make myself niche or whatever. I was like, I'm a New England writer. My work is about New England. So that's
Right.
kind of where it comes from.
Right. Well, thank you. And we'll get back to your story in the Q&A, I know. So thanks again for that. I'm going to turn it back over to Jacob for our next reader.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's my pleasure to introduce our next reader for the night, and that is Nikki White. Nikki White earned her Bachelor of Science in Communications and Media Studies from the University of Minnesota. She received her Master of Arts in English and Creative Writing from Southern New Hampshire University. Nikki has short stories published in the University of Minnesota Crookston-inspired Art Journal, issue 7. Her poetry chapbook, Hemisphere, which explores the appreciation and enigma of the left and right sides of the brain, has been submitted to publishers in the spring of 2025. She is currently working on a compilation of short stories, taking inspiration from one of her favorite authors, Adam Johnson. And I said hemisphere, but of course, like I'm going to put it in the chat too, because I think it's a brilliant play on words and how you've combined them together, just so folks can see. Because I don't know if me saying it is enough, but it's wonderful job with this title here. So yes, welcome, Nikki, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you again for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. And yes, hemisphere is a play on words. And so I'm glad to kind of switch it up a little bit and provide you guys a poetic aspect. This is a chapbook, poetry chapbook. And kind of like it was introduced, it is an immersion and celebration of the left sides and the right sides of our brains and the various moods that come along with it. So I will jump right in. I am a paper person. Computers have failed me today, so I trust them not. And the two poems that I'm reading are a part of the left side of our functioning brain. And so the first one is entitled Math. It's difficult to equate home with happiness, both lost in my prime, core memories at 7, 11, 13, 17. Blinded by the perceived infinitude of money, ex-parent found fulfillment in personal pursuits. Why parent tried to keep us whole with just a fraction. During childhood, the logic of home became divisible by the parents within it. Without the X, I never found my axis point. As an adult, I still fumble with the mental math of trying to graph who I would have been with both parents and planes. And so that's Math. Math is a free verse poem. My next poem that I'm sharing with you all is entitled Language. Language is my problem child poem, but also one I'm most proud of, as it is a sestina, and it killed me in more ways than one. But I'm excited to share it with you all now. So here it is. It is entitled Language. Words contribute to the principal method of human connection. We construct stanzas to convey meaning. Many enjoy being a poet. But in between the torrent wave of written words, I sit mute. Inspiration with indignation is the burden of an antiquous soul. The sweet hint of hidden words on the tip of our tongues is the lure of language. My mind wrestles with the friction of communicating poorly. When and if my spoken word is spoken poorly, my deepest vocabulary suddenly deafens connection. Panic permeates thick skin, exposing the viscosity of the lifeline to language. Self-fulfilling prophecies awaken of dying with all the words that condemn a poet. Trepidation as magister sends the soul in such great spiral, creativity clings to mute. In my search of speaking well, I recite Hughes, Angelou, and Giovanni, each disrupt the mute. Their work, the opposite of poorly, communicates the sounds that speak life back to my soul, for they lived in poetry and died in praise. They are a connection for me to enjoy the being of being a poet. I must relinquish the recurring fears of failing language. And so I begin to write feverishly, no matter the language. My mind resurrects the Langston lying mute. Maya gestures me back to the symbolism of poet, and simply being a Nikki negates the poorly. Universally spoken with the inflections of human connection, I appreciate each for expressing the vocabulary of soul. The conversation of creative expression is the speech of soul. The grove of greats before us cultivates a universal language, so we may mimic their tactics of communicating authentically, aiding to connection. The inner and external pangs of expressing thoughts can mute, but each time that we speak in our own voices, we silence the poorly because we are rooted in the being of being a poet. It isn't so much the speaking like a poet as it is the vocation of the soul. The symbolization of silence is the will of the poorly, but I evoke my right to contribute to our language, despite tumultuous times of mute. Words contribute to the principal method of human connection. Poorly, we serve our right to speech if we restrict our being of being a poet. Connection can be hindered, but who can stifle the words of another soul? Language is most effective when vocalized from beyond the fear of mute. Desi?
I am thoroughly impressed. I mean, like, sestinas are, you said it almost killed you, right? Like, I mean, they are, I posted in the chat what a sestina is. They are very complex, and like they can be very hard because like usually like you don't want it to come off as like forced, but this
No.
was so fluid and worked so well. And I loved like mute just punctuated itself so well throughout the poem. Like that was the one that stuck to me. That was the word that I kept
Yeah.
hearing over and over again. Very impressive. So I mean, like this was a form that is this your first exploration into sestinas, or have you tried them
Yes.
before? Yeah.
Well, I've tried them. They ain't tried me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I have tried them, and I made it a goal in my writing program to get one like and so in my capstone with Professor Monroe, who I love dearly, I said, this chapbook is not going to be right in my mind until I can get this right. And I will keep trying and keep trying. But it was so difficult. But it was the complexity of it and the challenge of it that just kept propelling me forward to keep trying. But will I write another one? Yeah.
I mean, you nailed the first one, so why go with the second one, right? I mean, you already got it. So, fantastic job. I mean, like I remember I was an undergraduate and my instructor it was a fiction course, and he said, "Let's do a sestina fiction piece." And that alone, like even like fiction where you have all the words that you can just throw
Yeah.
out there and stuff, was incredibly difficult for me, and I could never do it as
Yeah.
just brilliantly as you did in this poetic form. So bravo. And then the math, I don't want to forget the math poem either. Amazing. Love the X parent and Y parent. Love the use of math throughout it. The logic of the poem visible by the parents. Just well done. Brilliant. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing both of them. I'm sure we'll have questions afterwards with everyone and stuff, but thank you, Nikki, for sharing those. This was just great. Paul, do you want to introduce our next reader?
Yes, I will. And I just want to say how much I enjoyed that poem, or both of those poems as well, but the Sestina especially really knocked me out. So thank you for that. Our next reader for the night is the talented Ashleigh Worley. Ashleigh is a fantasy writer who recently earned an MFA in creative writing, honing a love for telling stories that has followed her since childhood. Outside of fiction, she's worked in SEO and content writing, and she hopes to use her skills to uplift minority voices within the publishing industry. You may have seen her byline on many SNHU newsroom stories, and she has been a behind-the-scenes force at SNHU's online literary journal, The Penman Review. When she's not reading or writing, she's probably gaming or spending her time with her dad and abundance of cats. So Ashleigh, I'm going to turn it over to you and the cats.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to be reading the prologue of the young adult fantasy novel I wrote for my MFA thesis. We killed the dragons, and I had a feeling we would burn in hell forever for it. The king sent us here with a mission, and maybe I hadn't considered just what it would mean to get close to our target. It didn't occur to me that part of our task would be putting in an end to one of those precious creatures. Nausea turned in my gut as the moment kept coming back to me over and over and over. Distant torchlight revealed the enormous outline of two dragons, sleeping soundly in the Drakenfell Palace courtyard, protecting the human king's enemies. I swallowed hard as I peered at them, wrapped around each other, and I realized they were mates. Just as the queen and king we had been sent to kill were mates. Gods above, I couldn't do this. But the fear of looking like a coward can convince you to do just about anything. So we killed the dragons. The king had experimenters working on secret mixtures and formulas. They had created a lethal injection for those the king wished to be rid of without making a show of it. 6 drops of the liquid would kill a man within 10 minutes. The king sent us here with 2 syringes as long as my hand to kill the dragons quickly and quietly. I might not want to look like a coward, but that didn't mean I had to do the damn deed myself. I removed the syringes from my pack and handed them to 2 of the 5 men accompanying me. I hope none of the others saw me look away, unwilling to watch something so beautiful pass from this world. The dragon king and queen were already awake and halfway across the room when we entered their chambers. Their eyes were wide, tears streaming down the woman's face. Gods. I realized the moment I saw the grief on her face that dragon riders must have some sort of special connection with their mounts. The king and queen woke from their sleep the moment they felt something wrong with the dragons. So much for the element of surprise. But the king didn't send us to quickly and quietly assassinate these 2 and make it look like an accident. He sent us to make a statement. So we killed the king and queen. 2 of our men died in the process, although the couple had just woken and appeared to be unarmed when we entered the room. The two who died were the same ones who delivered the injections to their dragons, but that was surely just a coincidence. Gods, we had somehow gotten through it. I wasn't the only one who averted my gaze from the couple's bloodied bodies now resting on the bed. We turned to leave, and that's when we heard it from an adjacent room. A baby's cry. My blood went cold. No. No. Our king didn't say, but how would he know? The king and queen likely hadn't announced it, but how did they hide her pregnancy? It didn't matter now. We darted across the room as silently as possible, avoiding the bodies of our fallen comrades. We would have to leave them. We couldn't possibly sneak out of the castle and back home bearing 2 dead bodies. We entered the room where the baby's cry came from, and the 4 of us gathered around the crib. Above it, a mobile with 3 soaring dragons danced above the child's head. They were too young for any of us to make out a gender. My companion's hand grazed his knife holster, and the one next to him let out a hiss and grabbed his arm. No! The king did not send us here to kill a child, a baby. He didn't even mention a baby. He said to kill the dragon king and queen. That's it. But if we leave it, the king and queen surely have had advisors who will raise the child and make it the ruler, and then the king will send us to kill them in a few years. We might as well just kill it now. No! Listen, the child is too young to remember any of this. Indeed, their eyes were already drifting closed again, as if comforted by the knowledge that someone was there, completely unaware of their parents' bodies cooling in the next room over. It doesn't matter. Like I just said, the advice we take the child. What? I have an uncle and aunt who desperately want a child, but he's barren. We give the child to them and let them raise the kid as their own. Coloring is similar enough. We can't murder this child, but we can make them into something that's not an heir to the dragon throne. What will we tell the king? The king must never know. Over this unnamed child's crib, we swore never to tell the king of this child's existence. The man with the aunt and uncle who desperately wanted a child found a sling to carry the baby in and carefully arranged his jacket over the child to conceal them. I cannot explain what magic came over us. Our king sent the 6 most loyal men he had to kill the dragon king and queen. 4 of us survived, and 4 of us were so moved by the child before us that we could not possibly bring ourselves to kill them. Maybe we were cowards in the end, but maybe that wasn't quite the right word. The man with the aunt and uncle left the court soon after, delivering the baby to its new home, and we never saw him again. So I never even learned if the child was a boy or a girl. None of us could ever find the child, even if we wanted to, and perhaps that was for the best. To this day, the king still does not know that the heir to the throne he worked so hard to topple still lives and breathes somewhere out there. Thank you.
Thank you for reading that. That's just such as somebody mentioned in the chat, such a great setup. It's it's like the voice of that narrator is so compelling, so matter of fact. So we killed the dragons, so we killed the king and queen, but at the same time, there's compassion and emotion there too. Is that a voice that's going to continue in the rest of the novel?
It's not. It's actually something I wrote for an exercise in one of my early MFA classes, and I loved it so much that I wanted to use it in the story somehow, so I made it the prologue.
Very cool. So does the novel then pick up years later?
It does.
All right. All right. Very cool. We're going to definitely talk more about this in the Q&A. Thanks again. And I'm going to turn it over to Jacob.
Thank you. And our final reader for the night is Jessica Matson. Jessica Matson spent the first half of her childhood just south of Boston and the latter half nestled among the pines and rocky coast of southern Maine. She holds a Master of Arts in English and Creative Writing with a concentration in nonfiction from the Southern New Hampshire University and a Bachelor of Music in Film Scoring from Berklee College of Music. Her memoir, Writing, explores the raw terrain of trauma and recovery and the resilience that rises from it. Quiet but unshakable, always anchored in truth. Jessica now lives in New Hampshire, where she continues her 20-year career in academic technology within higher education. She shares her home with her cat, Sky, who faithfully oversees her storytelling, piano playing, and video game marathons. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much. So honored to be here. And thank you everyone who's here. So I'm going to be reading from my thesis, which was composed of 6 essays in chronological order. Just a context, I was groomed and abused by my private music teacher throughout high school, and I wanted to finally conquer that by giving it a narrative. And the following essays in my thesis covers the various chapters of my life that were a ripple effect by that initial trauma. My goal was to show how everything was intertwined, including my behaviors and actions, but also show how I persevered and broke those patterns into the world of recovery, which I'm incredibly grateful for. So I will be reading my first essay, which is about the trauma, and I will give a disclaimer that I do not get into graphic details about what happened, but it is a heavy subject. So just wanted to throw that out there. So, all right, here we go. So on July 22nd, 1999, he wrote to me, "You could have a huge impact on what happens if you got so frustrated about this that you decided to tell people about it and let the chips fall where they fall. It's just weird. I could lose everything by you uttering 3 sentences." Sometimes I wish he had lost everything, but he didn't. And so I'm uttering the sentences again, louder. And if it's not heard, I'll utter some more. I'll scream it. But hire a lawyer and they'll tell you the evidence won't hold up in court. Confront the university where he now teaches, and they'll say too much time has passed for it to seem credible. It's always a he said, she said, and so he keeps his job and he keeps teaching. So what is justice when you've done everything imaginable? 27 years ago, when I was 15 up until I was 18, a seed was planted by my private saxophone teacher, a seed of silence, of shame, and over time it hardened into a rock and settled deep in the earth. This rock lives in the soil of my life, an unyielding presence that has shaped my very foundation. At times it felt like a boulder, like an unbearable anchor that kept me tethered to the past, heavy with the silence I carried for so long. Perhaps justice is not about watching his world crumble, but it lies in my ability to transform this rock into a stepping stone, a catalyst for growth rather than a shackle that binds me. And in doing so, I hope to further my healing and extend a hand to others grappling with their buried rocks, no matter the form, shape, or size they take. On the surface, I thrived in high school music, winning best in state on tenor sax, performing with Maine's top high school musicians, opening for jazz legends like Dave Brubeck and Cleo Lane. By senior year, I'd earned a scholarship to Berklee College of Music with accolades for both me and my private teacher. But while I taught myself how to play, he taught me how to fuck every Tuesday for 3 years. It started innocently enough with a high five. He always high-fived me after playing a piece on tenor sax that had been an assignment. But this particular high five, he held on to my hand, and I felt like I was on cloud 9. And after I shared the news of my acceptance into Southern Maine Jazz Festival, I closed my saxophone case and turned to leave, and he blocked the door to envelop me in a long hug instead. The familiar sounds of squeaks and squawks from the adjoining lesson rooms faded into the background. These gestures were unlike anything I had experienced before. I thought it was love. He framed it as love. I can still remember the aromas of burnt coffee and stale Marlboro red cigarettes clung to his navy blue L.O. Bean sweater, weaving themselves into my Delia's shirt and sparking thoughts I, at 15, naively labeled as love. I nestled my cheek against his shoulder, the fabric warm and soft against my skin, while the harsh fluorescent light glinted off the silver picture frame of him and his wife, casting sharp reflections that felt like high beams trying to blind me. "Oh, here's your check," I said as I handed it to him, my mother's handwriting still fresh with black ink. After every lesson, I would meet my mother back in the lobby of the music store, slipping into the passenger seat of her car like nothing happened. The moment the door shut, I put on my headphones, drowning in whatever music could distract me from the weight in my chest. It took everything in me to keep crumbling right there, to swallow the urge to sob. I hid the emotions. I hid the crying. And when we got home, I'd slip away, curling to the corner of my bedroom, my cat pressing against me like he knew my secrets. I hid the emotions when I walked the halls of my high school, sitting through classes and laughing at the right times. I hid them at soccer practice, in the band room, and during jazz performances. I hid them when I did my homework at the kitchen table with my dad. I put it all into a box, tucked neatly into the back of my brain, preserving the image of a normal teenage girl living a normal teenage life. I focused on the music, the accolades, and how people's eyes widened when they heard me play. I told myself that's what matters. That's what made me valuable. Not the stolen moments behind closed doors, not the way his hands lingered too long, and not the way he made me feel special and sick at the same time. I learned to live in two separate worlds, the one where I was a rising jazz star with a promising future, and the other where I was his secret, the recipient of whispered promises that always felt just out of reach. And when I stepped onto a stage with my saxophone in hand, I became someone else, powerful, untouchable. But the moment the final note faded, I was just a girl again, trapped in a narrative I had no words for yet. Lessons didn't happen in the summer, but we stayed connected through online chats, which I still have, and secret meetings in the woods near my house. I'd bike to the town marsh, where he'd be waiting, unloading his bike. We'd ride along an overgrown railroad path that wound past a slow chocolate brown river, the kind of river that seemed to carry its own secrets, its surface dappled with patches of pea green covered slime and an algae-like glaze on its surface. It was in places like these that he took me, always in the woods somewhere, that I began to learn what sex was, against the backdrop of hot Maine summers, cicadas buzzing in the background, the river oozing beside us. I became adept at dishonesty, mastering the art of compartmentalization and secret keeping to protect his reputation, something he continuously drilled in me, while repressing my circumstances' reality. And later, as an adult, I numbed myself through substances, seeking escape in their embrace. But as a teenager, I learned the high of loving someone unattainable, one that I only got bits and pieces of long before I knew the high of alcohol and drugs. Justice is an elusive concept, a moving target that shifts with perspective. I once thought that justice meant consequences, the kind that would strip him of the life he had built, the credibility he had so carefully curated. I fantasized about him being publicly disgraced, his name plastered in the headlines as a cautionary tale. I wanted him to feel the same powerlessness I had felt at 15 when I stood in that tiny windowless lesson room, caught in the dissonance between admiration and violation. For justice, could I reclaim the parts of myself he had stolen? Could I rewrite the narrative, not as a victim of his story, but as an author of my own? But healing isn't a linear process, and neither is forgiveness. Some days I hear a jazz standard I once played under his instruction, and the past comes roaring back uninvited. I think about the younger version of myself, the girl who entered that music store wide-eyed and hungry for approval. I want to reach through time and warn her. I want to tell her that love is not secrecy and that admiration should never require sacrifice. But I also want to tell her that she'll survive and she'll find ways to transmute her pain into something greater than herself. So music was never the villain. If anything, it was my first language of resilience. And in choosing to tell this story and reclaiming my voice, I'm no longer bound by silence. At 28 years old, I made a drunken call to my mother and finally confessed after 13 years of keeping it a secret. What followed was a decade spent in and out of treatment centers, chronic relapsing, a cycle of job gains and losses, and experimentation with hard substances introduced by kids I met along the way. I grappled with alcoholism and drug addiction. I faced homelessness, and I watched as my family cut ties, understandably so. My friends disappeared, and I lost people to overdoses while I narrowly escaped my own. And yet through it all, I built a life more beautiful than I could ever imagine. Thanks to therapy and the countless souls I now call my angels, the love of my family and friends have returned, and I have learned the lessons I was always meant to learn. How to untangle the roots around the rocks stuck in my soil, how to embrace honesty, accountability, and sincerity, and how to live a life worth living without a drink or a drug. I just celebrated 5 years of recovery, which allowed me to achieve this master's degree. And in recent years, I've started to forgive him instead of clinging to resentment or seeking revenge. And by writing this, I hope my justice is finally served. That's it.
Jessica, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I
Thank
know very powerful work.
Thank you.
And someone else had commented in the chat, and it stuck out to me as well, among many of the lines, but music was never the villain. And I love seeing that piano behind you, knowing that you continue to play it, and just, you
Yeah.
know, it's a wonderful thing. And
Yes, I still haven't been able to pick up the saxophone, but
Right.
piano was my first instrument when it started when I was 4, and it's my safe space. So yeah, I still continue to play that. Yes.
I play the piano as well, and it is
Nice.
it is a very therapeutic instrument, I gotta say. So
It
I'm
is.
glad to hear it. So
Yes.
well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I mean, again, like everyone has said in the chat, it's very brave of you to share it as well.
Oh, thanks.
What made you ultimately decide, like, this is, I'm gonna put this down. Like, this is something that I want to put down and share with folks in my thesis writing class and stuff. Like, what made you cross that threshold?
So I've been journaling since I was 6 years old. There's a whole shelf behind me of all my journals, including of that time. So I thankfully have a record of most things in my life. And I got sober on May 30th of 2020, just during the pandemic. Thanks to author Laura McCowan, who came out with a book called We Are the Luckiest and started a virtual online support community. At the same time, I just decided I'm part of my recovery and is to write about what happened and heal in my sobriety through looking at my experiences, but framing them in a way of lessons learned, the silver linings, rather than dwell on and be a victim of that, or feel sorry for myself or feel shame. So, the degree was the nice perk, but that wasn't the purpose. And I work well with deadlines and assignments, so I knew I wouldn't be able to do it unless I get into school to do it, because
Yeah.
I'm not very good at self-motivating. So yeah, so that's, and I just felt like, it's time to finally give it a narrative. It's been almost 20 years, and I tried very hard to get justice through the courts, and it was difficult and proved not to work. So like I said in my essay, this is my justice, is to put words to it, and hopefully, and more so, and more importantly, hopefully help someone else that might be experiencing the same thing or has gone through something similar. So
Yes, it's very inspirational. And I think that, I mean, as someone pointed out in the chat too, like, I mean, sobriety during the pandemic it actually went the opposite way for a lot of folks. So it's very,
yes,
just,
it was actually great for me,
yeah,
because they closed the stores, so I could not go out to get anything.
there you go, a bit of
So
silver lining with it.
yeah, it was silver lining, but I think everything was the way that whole era panned out was the way exactly it was supposed to be. And so I consider COVID a blessing, which is horrible to say, but that whole era was a blessing to me. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing, Jessica. We only have a couple minutes left, but I do want to open it up for Q&A. So if every writer would like to come on, or all of our graduates come on camera and stuff, and we can ask a couple. Paul and I always have some on reserve here as well, but if anyone wanted to post anything immediately in the chat, we can try to address it. Paul, this is crazy. Usually we have, we'll have like 6 folks read for us, and we have like 5 minutes left at the end. And again, this happened again today, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because all of these, everything was just wonderful tonight. And I really appreciated all of you sharing it. Paul, I'm going to throw it over to you to ask the first question, though, and we're going to try to we'll do a kind of a lightning round to get a few answers out of it and stuff.
Well, I think what I'm going to do, because we're kind of pressed for time, is I'm going to ask everybody the same question, and maybe we can just go around. And basically what I want to know is what's next? What are you doing with the piece that you read for us, and kind of like what are you working on now? And just kind of tell us where your career as a writer is going. And I'm going to start us off with Kayleigh.
Oh, hey, I was just putting some links in the chat here.
Oh, great.
So I've been working on, I just joined Substack a few months ago, and I started writing Sunday missives, so a newsletter every Sunday. It has like a little template to it where I write about, it's called the 5 W's. So I write about my writing community, the world. I say a little something about the world and how horrific it is, and like things I plan to do about it. Sometimes I can't do anything, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. I do a little woo-woo section because I'm like witchy and I like astrology and shit like that. So I do a little woo-woo. And then words, and then wonder. So words is something I wrote that week. So it's usually essay, and then wonder, I just ask the audience like a question to ponder for the week. So please check that out. It's free to subscribe to. I'm also going to link my writing community's website, where I'm on vacation this week. So I'm working on putting some of our prompts in there so you can use them for your own writing communities, or just to feel like you're joining us. It's one of the most magical things I ever found in my life moving down here. And it's great. So I'm going to link to the Northampton Lit Society as well.
Thank you for sharing those links. And Bethany, what about you?
The piece I shared is the piece I'm trying to have the first draft done by the end of the year. I'm a little bit behind because of kind of like Kayleigh was mentioning, the way the world has been. There's been some other coping mechanisms I've been using that have taken me away from writing a little bit. But I've reconnected with some friends and some fellow writers, so I'm going to get back on track, I think. So my plan is to have draft 1 done by the end of the year, and then see what I can do from there. It's a scary endeavor. And then I put a link to my blog earlier, but I'll share it again now that all the readings are done. Yeah, it was really great to be able to come on here and hear everyone else's words and be able to share.
That's awesome. And I wish you the best of luck with that draft. And I hope you, get it published.
Thank you.
Nikki, let's asking you the same question.
Oh, yep. Here I am. So Hemisphere is out in the publishing universe. I finally let it go. I was nervous, but it was ready. It was time. I know someone asked in the chat, I don't know if I answered, I think I did, about the word mute being in the Sestina originally. No, it was not. That I had, spent months writing it, rewriting it, revising it, rewriting it, rewriting it. And it was one of the last revisions where it just, I think as a writer, and you all, the students, and my fellow graduates, when it clicks, it clicked and you just know. And I just knew that that was it to unlock the full capability of that poem. So right now I'm currently working on a compilation of short stories. One, my husband was bummed I didn't read today, about an ice cream man. But I'm working on that, and I will link it probably through my Instagram account as I'm redoing my writing website, because I have OCD and nothing is right ever.
Well, let me just point out that Southern New Hampshire University has an online literary journal called the Penman Review, and always open for poetry and fiction and nonfiction submissions. So I address that to you and to everybody here, actually. Jacob just put the link into the chat. So Ashleigh, let's move on to you. What are you doing? What's next? Are you querying your novel?
Well, I think I was so close to it at the end of my MFO program that I was like, this isn't ready. But when I read it back for this event and I was practicing, I was like, wow, this is really good.
It is really good.
So that might be my next step.
I hope so.
Outside of that, I've started freelancing. I'm really excited because I had such an amazing opportunity to learn so many things during the MFA program, and not everyone gets that opportunity. And so I really want to help, especially indie authors, to be able to make the best versions of their book blurbs and author bios and things like that, so they can feel confident in marketing themselves.
That's awesome. I know you're going to do great. I mean, all your work, your journalism and everything here at SNHU was just fantastic.
Thank you.
So, yep. Jessica, what about you? What's next?
My thesis courses took a lot of emotional toll on writing about my life. So I'm kind of like an ostrich head in the sand right now. But my couple past professors keep emailing me and pushing me to submit my manuscript. I just need to gather the confidence to do so. I don't have school anymore with a deadline, so I need to do something. But my small goal for this year is to finally start a Substack and to start writing as regularly as possible, and submit essays that outside of my thesis to different places. I love duotrope, so using that, and because I have nothing published, so I don't have a repertoire or anything yet. So I just have to get the courage to dip my feet in the water, and being here tonight definitely helped that. So
good. I mean, you're a really wonderful writer. I mean, the amazing thing is the emotional content of your work is so raw, and yet the mastery of prose with which you describe it and sort of put a boundary around it and own it, I feel is really what sets your work apart and makes it something special. So
thank you.
You may not be published yet, but I suspect that won't be the case for long.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
And that really brings us to the end of our night, unfortunately.
It's wild, but
That's probably my fault. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. And we like asking questions between the readings too. And I feel like we got a lot of great responses from all of you between pieces as well. So we really appreciate your time tonight, and just reading amazing work across the board, and just fiction, nonfiction, poetry. You all encapsulate the best of the best that we have to offer here at Southern New Hampshire University's creative writing programs. And we're just so thankful to have you be a part of it. And thank you so much. Paul, do you want to close us out, or do you want me to? I'm happy to. Do you want, or?
No, I can close this out.
You want to close out? Okay, I'll post the link in the chat for the word for word playlist. That'll be my to do.
I was thinking that maybe Jessica would play us off, but
that would be amazing. I mean, you did get a degree in film, right? Like film scores, which I mean, personally, I love film scores. So I don't know if you're a Thomas Newman fan.
I am. I got to meet him there too. I was just absolutely shocked. Like
you got to meet Thomas Newman.
So we had a BMI day, and they would bring in a film scoring composer to come in and spend the day. So I got to spend the
Oh
day
my
with Thomas.
God.
Yeah, I was. So he's
American
at,
Beauty
yeah.
changed my life. Like
So
that.
I saw that in high school, and his scores became a huge help to me during what I was going through, actually, and just because it just brought out emotion I couldn't put in words. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He needs to win an Oscar.
I
Why
know.
hasn't he
What
won
the
an
heck?
Oscar yet? I mean,
Crazy.
that is so cool. Well, I'm sorry to hijack that again, but I'm a huge Thomas Newman fan.
Oh,
So
no
I'm just
way. That's
that's so
awesome.
cool.
I don't meet people like that every day, so that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, there's another one in the chat, it looks like.
American
Ooh.
Beauty. I swear. I mean, Grateful Dead's American Beauty is great too. Don't get me
That's a
wrong.
great
But
album,
if
yes.
Thomas Newman's American Beauty, hands up,
Yeah.
that should have won the Oscar that
I
year
know. Freaking
and the next
Williams.
year after that. But if you ever get a chance to listen to it and walk around and just reflect and meditate, it's amazing.
Yes.
So, anyways, back to you, Paul, and thank you,
Yeah.
Jessica.
Okay.
Thank you.
On that note, as we mentioned at the start of the evening, tonight marks our final word-for-word reading event of the academic year. We want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone who has supported the series and helped make it such a success. This year, we were honored to welcome a fantastic lineup of guests, including authors Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, Jeffrey Ford, Tanana Reeve-Du, literary agents Joshua Bilmus and Lucienne Diver, faculty authors Adrian Kisner and Melissa Marr, who specialize in young adult literature, the Penman Review Fall Fiction finalists, and tonight our outstanding graduates from the BA, MA, and online MFA creative writing programs. Each of our participants has shared compelling work and thoughtful insights into the worlds of creative writing and publishing. We're truly grateful for their contributions. If you missed any events or want to revisit your favorites, be sure to check out our word for word YouTube playlist, which Jacob has linked in the chat. Tonight's reading will also be posted there soon, so keep an eye out. Finally, a big congratulations and best wishes to all of our graduating students, represented by Bethany, Ashleigh, Nikki, Kayleigh, and Jessica as they take their next steps. Thank you again for being part of this community, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall. Till then, bye-bye.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Take care.